Welcome to The Lumber Word, where industry veterans Matt Beamer, Gregg Riley, and Ashley Buckholt dissect the world of commodity lumber each week. We bring you up-to-date insights on supply, demand, and market trends, sharing our trading expertise to benefit everyone in the supply chain. Join us for informative and entertaining discussions that guarantee to make you wiser about all things lumber.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode number 110 of the Lumber Channel. Coming at you with some new technical equipment. Charles, you're dialed in now, man. We were just.
I know. I feel like a podcast professional.
You look good, dude. You got the headset and the microphone up top.
Yeah.
We're gonna get. Are you gonna post this picture, Ash?
If Matt can
do,
get his
when you do the release on LinkedIn.
I did it last week, so that was good feedback on Logie's podcast last week. We had some good show. And I'm
not going to put my face all the way in the camera.
And I did find out after I went through some of the counting some of our stats that Podbean, when we put on, doesn't count all of them. So I went into the individual Spotify and Apple accounts that I have and the YouTube account and tracked them all down. It's a lot higher, right? Because
we are the number one. We are the number one podcast in the lumber, building products, housing industry at the current time.
Well, so if people go to X, formerly known as Twitter, the singer formerly known as Twitter, it doesn't pick up on like Podbean sometimes, so it misses counts. So that's why I had to go right into Apple and into Spotify and look at their specific ones, and that's what I spent a couple hours in the office last Saturday lining it up. So
you work on Saturdays, huh?
I do. So it's well over 1,000 listeners.
Nice.
Which is nice. So I got that going for me.
So, people are going to notice that we don't have a guest this week. It was interesting because I was listening to a podcast recently and, the guest came on and said, I don't really usually do a lot of podcasts because I find that the people are really uninteresting and not that smart.
That was the All In podcast.
So I figured we don't want to have any of those guests on, especially the one that's really, our podcast is different because 3 of the 4 of us are smart.
I'll take low man. That's fine.
I heard the same podcast and the guy's like, I have
how great was that, huh?
He goes, I have a hard time going on smaller podcasts. Basically, I read into it because the guys are pretty stupid that I'm talking to and can't talk on my level. And I'm very uninterested in the conversation. I'm like,
what a guest. I want that guy on.
God. That's
we just want more of Gregg Riley's glaring personality is really what it is. Is that Tiger Woods hat?
What is that hat?
What do you guys want to talk about this week? We're expanding our universe to other things. We don't know what they are yet, but
hey, let's talk about the USA versus Canada hockey match tonight. I got a side bet on that.
I just had a call with one of my mills, and I went, Trudeau should really be trolling Trump on this and say, hey, Canada wins, there's no more tariff BS, none of that stuff. And you just, we're not going to be the 51st state. So just S the up, right? But then he told me actually Trump was trolling Trudeau on Twitter on
Truth Social.
Truth Social.
They were trying to get Trump to go to the game.
What's the over-under on how many fights are going to start in the first 10 seconds?
He's got a governor's meeting in D.C. and he invited Trudeau.
So there's no upside. So there's no upside to talking smack because the people will be listening to this in the morning after the game's over. And if Canada wins, wouldn't this be their equivalent of like Miracle on Ice? Will they'll celebrate it for the next 40 years?
No, but you won't hear the end of it for a month.
That's true.
I think it's going to take longer than that because
honestly, I don't blame them for being pissed off, dude. I mean, how would you like it if somebody's calling you the 51st state? I'm not sure the whole end game.
I agree with you, Matt. I think that crosses the line.
I agree.
I completely agree. I think that's over the line. Everything's all well and good, but I mean, you need more respect for these are our neighbors. They're our brothers of North America. And you know what? I think nobody feels disrespected if you say, hey, it's kind of like a kid brother type of relationship, because obviously we're 10 times their size. But I mean, like, we should be more taking care of them and be more respectful. I agree.
I just feel like, look, we've made a living doing business with Canada.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, my kids are going to college, and some of the money I'm using to pay for that has come from my Canadian endeavors. And
you make money. You make money in this business.
They have supported me for 30 years.
I need to change my philosophy.
Yeah, your company is headquartered in Canada, Greg. I mean, it's like, we want to joke. I get joking and all that stuff, but when you're the president and you're going, hey, you're the 51st state, it seems a little bit like, okay, yeah, you have crossed the line. And then the next point is, I don't think I really want Canada as the 51st state, because if that happens, you'll have like it'll just be another California, right? I mean, the Canadian as a whole, they vote more liberal, Democrat. So, and they have the same size economy and number of people as Texas or California. So think about all the different, how many Congress people they're going to get, how many votes they're going to get.
Never going to happen.
None of it works out.
Silly thing to talk about. It's just like that there's going to be a tariff on
Shock and awe.
Never going to happen.
I really wonder what is the end game, other than just trying to, get under the skin of Trudeau. But didn't Trudeau already announce that he's resigning and that they're recalling?
He gone.
Yeah. I think the way.
Yeah. Okay.
The way it was explained, I think Kip was telling us too, is it takes a while for them to then get everybody together, months for have this vote and all that. And look, I'm not a smart man, but when I look at this parliamentary stuff, I don't know how you got all these different groups, right? And they all I don't know if it's
they form coalition governments. So
yeah. Do they wear wigs too? They don't wear wigs like they do in England, do they? Where they stand up and
we should go back to that. Actually,
that'd be kind of cool.
You go to traffic court and there's some guy with this magnificent white wig.
Yeah,
speeding,
for a
Mr. Beamer.
Oh man, that's so.
This is the best part of the podcast for me, guys. I don't know about you, but I mean, you know what? I don't even need to talk about like anything.
What, you're tired of chasing around late trucks, Greg?
I came in this morning, Matt, and I had like 3 emails from truckers that were at yards going, there's no one here to unload me, a truck that was sent to the wrong location, and then like 3 emails of like, can you get me an ETA on this truck? And then Ashley sends me like, have you had your coffee yet?
No, the real elephant in the room is the pictures that Charles sent over of the guy pulling into the ditch. You want to explain that, Charles? This is impressive.
So I've seen this. I've seen this picture for the last year, and they're different trucks every time. When is somebody going to figure this turn out?
Well, see, the thing is I mean, in and out, we probably 180, 200 trucks a month, right? So it's very simple. Our forklift drivers are trained to give these guys direction. Well, a lot of people don't believe in the saying, I'm humble enough to know I don't know everything. And their ego's too big. So they violate the direct direction that works every single day, and they try to do it their own way. I mean, his whole his back axles were in the air in the middle of the ditch.
Yeah.
We had to get 2 cranes. The crane operator asked us to unload the lumber, and I said, you've lost your mind. I'm not touching that truck. You better figure out how to get the weight off of the back of it and get it out of the ditch, because we're not touching it. It's an art. And then he comes back Monday and he was upset because we didn't stick around and unload him. Well, on Fridays, everybody leaves at noon. He didn't get pulled out till 2:30.
Oh, man.
And we had to unload 2 trucks in the road. Luckily, we're in a small town. We shut the whole road down. There was cops. It was a disaster. One load we got from a reload came back. Straps were broken. Lumber was all over the middle of the road. I mean, it was a disaster. Absolute disaster.
The big question I have is, was his name Bubba or Cletus?
Whoa. Now we're throwing darts here, Beamer. No, Scott his name was probably like Scott Smith or something. So you want to go catch a walleye, Maddie? You want to go catch a walleye?
So
we don't have walleye in Oregon.
So
whatever.
Really?
King
Come on.
Salmon.
Wouldn't you be able to like dump a bunch of concrete in there and make the turn a little wider?
It's pretty wide.
Is
You
it?
can park 3 semi trucks side by side on the end.
I got you.
Turn
So if
in.
you make it wider, they're just going to do it more just farther away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then I got to spend the money to move the fence and all that. And he broke my gate. So
Yeah.
there were police reports. It was fun. It was a good Friday.
Build like a 40-foot tall statue of yourself. Just put it right there in that ditch.
I think I'm just gonna
like
Stalin.
Bob's Big Boy with your smile and everything.
Since we're telling like trucking stories, I'll tell this one that happened a couple of weeks ago. I won't mention any names of where it happened.
Name names. Mm-hmm.
Guy calls me and said, "Hey, I think I had a truck load of lumber stolen." I'm like, "Well, okay, that's fine. This reload takes pictures, and you got to give a card when you go in and show your ID, and like it's cameras everywhere. No problem."
Because it's a port.
I wait for like a week or two, no pictures, send back. Finally, the guy calls me and says, "Hey, did a detective call you or whatever?" I got a thing back from the port that said couldn't recognize any of the pictures or something, couldn't get good enough pictures. Well, guy pulls in with a truck, has a full face mask on, sunglasses with a hard hat pulled over his head, and he has cardboard over his over his license plates. So
red flag.
What did y'all get in these units of lumber from overseas? That's a real question.
Pulls in, loads up, leaves. Nobody sees him again. Well, got a bunch of pictures, but like nothing with any of the anything worthy on it. So I guess the rule is, hey, reloads, if anybody pulls in with a full face mask and sunglasses and cardboard over the license plate, may want to check that. Could be a problem.
I'm consistently amazed that, when you think about like
that's a great. I don't even care what you say after that. Just the fact that we're talking about transportation and that's how you start is the best part. That's a golden nugget. That is a Riley golden nugget right there.
I mean, Charles, like the hundreds of trucks that are shipping every day, like every which way going here. I'm just amazed that there's not more issues than there is. I mean, honestly, I just consider it's impressive that so much like gets where it's supposed to go properly. I really am. So
that is pretty impressive the way all that stuff moves around, and occasionally we get one, but generally you can catch them. One thing was interesting. We'll kind of like segue into talking about like the market, the housing report, tariff talk. Southern Pine, we're going to talk about why print keeps going up when Charles says it's flat.
Whoa. I mean, why do I always, you know what I've realized? I'm just the one that has to carry the load because my back is not as old as any of yours. I just have to deal with the ridicule and the negative feedback, but it's fine. I'll be your Huckleberry, fellas.
Speaking of
give us some, give us some insight into the Southern Yellow Pine market today, Charles. What's it like this week out there?
Yeah.
I mean, mills have done a great job holding the line, and they actually sold a order file. I mean, it's not a huge order file, but it gives them enough leverage to where they can firm pricing and bump and run if you need it. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we're selling is tomorrow delivery, and a lot of March, April, May locks, just because I know you guys don't want to hear this, but in the South, there's a lot of species swapping going on where it hasn't quite occurred in the past, right? We've already discussed the other segments that have openly done this, but there are new segments that are kind of jumping on the bandwagon. And we've seen a lot of inquiry based on that new open door that has allowed us to kind of diversify that customer base potentially.
So tell me, like, what segments are you seeing the switching from spruce to pine right now that we haven't seen? Single family never
did it in the South, and they're open to it.
Is this like where Mr. and Mrs. Hemfer, Mr. and Mrs. Dougfir, Mr. and Mrs. Southern Pine, Mr. and Mrs. Spruce walk into the pineapple party and drop their keys in a dish?
Whoa!
And is that species swapping that you're talking about?
That got sticky quick, didn't it?
Yeah. Me and Dottie, we're swingers.
I mean,
hey, I will say this to Charles.
I love how Matt's in a frozen tundra and he's wearing a short sleeve shirt. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, I'm actually sitting in my little office here, but
He's actually an AI of Matt. That's not actually Matt.
If you're going to have a tariff and there's a threat that sometime in March, the price of that lumber is going to be jacked up by 25%. So there's different realities that have occurred. To me, the buyer, I buy lumber from Canada all the time, and some mills are just tacking the 25% on for March shipments. And if it gets removed, then it gets removed. But that's the price. Other mills are like, hey, we'll sell it to you at today's price, but if there is a tariff, we can either renegotiate or you can cancel. And so that's kind of a little bit more thoughtful approach, I would say. But the bottom line is, from my seat, if I've got commitments in March or April that I need to cover, and I don't want to mess around with the murkiness of that, I'm going to buy it from Sierra or Weyerhaeuser or Potlatch or IFG or Bennett or some of these yellow pine mills that Charles. I'm not buying it from Canada unless they can ship it right away. If there's a threat that I'm going to buy, get a 25% tax added to it, I'm not going to buy that. So I'll find an alternative in either Hemfer or Doug Fir or ESLP or SPF South or Whitewoods that I can get shipped from an American producer. That's already happening.
What are US prices doing this week, Matt? I mean,
they're up, but it's we had a real surge of business last week, and this week business was pretty good. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Today's relatively quiet compared to the last 3 days, but prices are for sure up on Western species, especially on 2x4. I told you guys a month ago, hey, I'm long. If I have one trade, it's just buy 2x4 and sell 2x6. Well, 2x6 has come down from its highs. We were selling 2x6 at one point, Western species 670-ish, Chicago 680 was sort of the high, and we've gone down to 630. But 2x4 has gone up to 600, right? And we were selling that stuff at 520, 530, 540 a month ago. So that's exactly what I thought would happen has happened, and it's mainly because, there's better demand for 2x4. At the same time, the mill optimizers are spitting out less 2x4 and more 2x6. So there you go.
Yeah. So basically,
is this the time when I say, remember in October, November, where I said that 2x4 and 2x6 16s were going to be the same price on European wood at the ports in the first?
Yeah, you got to attaboy yourself there, dude. If you get it right, you got to take some victories because you're going to get a few wrong too. But no, that it's happening, and it's going to continue to happen. I think the most sought after item that I've seen or heard in the last month is 2x4 16s. Any species, just a standard better, 2 and better, or higher grade.
And in the last week, right? Or the last few days, 16s have. Where do you think 16s and spruce are off the low trade price right now?
Low trade from where?
80.
What date? What low
Month,
trade?
30 days.
Probably. I'll guess here. You're what, 655 now?
Yeah, I mean, we sold.
You're up about $75, $80. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then my next question is, what do we think the spread between 2x4 and 2x6 16s is going to over the next 60 days? Is 2x4 going to be $50 over 2x6?
Are we saying 2x4?
Honestly, I think they'll be about the same, Greg. There's still a good demand for 2x6, and 16s, 18s, and 20s are pretty key lengths. 14s are the one that are cheap. So if you want to be the value hunter, go look at 14s. You can cut them back to 12s and still come out ahead in a lot of cases. But I would say 16s are going to be about the same for both 2x4 and 2x6 going forward. Unless the mills just crush the 2x6 market, but I don't think they will. I think they'll kind of divert some production back to 2x4 here in the next 90 days.
Matt, you're right. You're damn close to pencil trimming 14s to 12s, aren't you?
It happens all the time. It happens in the winter. So 2x4 14s have gotten cheap recently. They've finally firmed up, but they were pretty cheap here, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
2x6 14s have been a problem for mills. 2x8 14s are still a problem for mills.
See, that's
2x10
polar
14s
opposite
are usually
pine.
pretty good. What's that?
That's opposite in pine. I mean, 2 to 614s in pine right now are relatively tight comparatively speaking. So it's interesting to hear that.
In pine, do the mills mainly make 2 to 6, 8 to 16, or do they make a lot of 18s and 20s in general?
Depends on where you're
I
at.
mean, yeah, it's all
Like in your
it
region,
depends.
the area where the
mean,
14s are good.
I mean, your primary production is probably 12 and longer because majority of it's tree length.
Talking about this, so last night my phone starts blowing up around. It must have been a little bit after Trump talked, and I got a couple notes I wrote down here. Matt, you and I talked about it this morning. So I'm getting texts and emails with this thing about how Trump said there's going to be a tariff on Canadian lumber. And then I was talking to some people this morning. One of my buddies up in Wisconsin, he's like, it was funny last night. A bunch of the brokers' texts went out all showing this, right? And then you get emails from people. And I sent it to Gregg this morning, and I got back 3 words, blah, 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 which I look at this, I'm like, everybody sends out what their position is and supports it, right? And, if you're long CME, you're going to support, or you're going to be like, hey, there's going to be tariffs because you want the price to go up, right? If you're hedged, you don't care. But honestly, as we always say on here, you kind of want the price to go up because you can get out of a hedge a lot easier in an up market than you can in a down market. And then we were busy this week on trucks, I would say, Gregg, but our business was majority of it was 2x4, 8-foot, 9-foot stud trims to job sites a lot of times for March and April shipment. And most of our orders were orders of 10 to 20 to higher trucks, probably a bunch of those orders. That's where our volume came from, plus the other stuff. So there was a lot of people covering business. And I guess my question is, was everybody else busy? Are we stealing from the future business? Why are all these jobs getting covered all of a sudden? Those were just some thoughts that I had, but everybody is very polished about getting people like lathered up about stuff because people are getting long, and I'm getting a little concerned now that everybody's tilting to the long side, bullish side of the boat.
Fear and greed, man. It makes
next week when the March 1st comes and goes and there's no 25% tariff. What's going to happen?
Well, mills that have held back.
The balloon pops, Greg.
Where do you think, Matt? Where do you think
the balloon pops?
I think the first target's 575 in March. That was, support. And then 555 was major support. I don't know that we would get there. I mean, I think people would take delivery at 575 for sure. So there's going to be support if it drops down, but it would drop down immediately. You'd see the speculative longs would just take their whatever they can and just get out, and then the guys that want to sell it as a hedge would be in a hurry to sell it as a hedge. But it would all just be centered on March. I wouldn't have any interest in the May or beyond contracts because there's still the uncertainty out there, right? So we could just keep doing this for a while if we just keep kicking the can down the road. I don't really know. None of us really knows.
I think we're going to be talking about this in
November
at the Montreal Wood Convention.
November.
We're going to be talking.
I think we're going to be talking about it in November.
Yeah,
I hope we aren't talking about this in November. Honestly, I'd rather talk about other things than politics and tariffs.
Yeah. So I agree. So
we get inundated with politics all day long in this country, anyhow, without even trying. And so I'd just soon talk about business. Now I know this, Ashley, to answer your question: are we taking some business from the future?
Yeah.
I think we've sped up the process by which job shippers are willing to cover jobs. They might have sat on some of these orders a little longer. They want to for sure have the stuff in the barn, if it's close in type stuff. So yeah, I think we're taking some of that business away from what you might have gotten in March. The retail side, they haven't changed their postures really all that much. Most of the retailers have an adequate inventory. I would say that the wholesale community and some of the mills that ship lumber across the border have decent inventories. You know, I mean, I think there's I'm getting offered inventories from a wide range of people that don't always have it. You know, I'm talking wholesale type entities. And I know there's a few mills in Canada that have shipped across the border early. I've been offered that lumber from them. So I think if there was a tariff, there'd be enough lumber in the system here in the United States to handle that first wave, that first surge of extra business from the retail trade coming in March and April.
Yeah.
But then after that, what do you do next, right? That'd be the tricky thing. And what do the job shippers do going into June, July, August?
So I've heard from a couple people, like more of the back-to-back type trading. I'm having a harder time finding lumber to flip and buy.
Right.
Certainly I could see that.
Well, because your replacement cost is getting too high.
Yeah.
What's the value proposition of that business model?
Depends on what you're talking about, Greg. If it's a niche item that people need you, then, you know, and you're good at it, then it's pretty good.
Yeah. Okay.
But if it's just 8s and 9s and 2-4 random, I mean, AI is going to take that job. So it's, I mean, it's high volume, low margin business. Yeah. The reason why it's tightening up is because the same people that they want to buy the lumber from have less of an incentive to sell it.
But so it's interesting, like, you know, Euro, which is one of the markets we're in, there's been kind of an air pocket on shipments, a little lag. I heard from a couple of people, and Greg, I was talking to another guy today. They were told one of the vessels had a little fire on it before it loaded, so they had to spend time. And we were told that one of them like dinged another one, so they had to load it, a different one. So there's been on a couple of the big shipments coming over here. Correct me if I'm wrong on this. There's a little lag in wood coming across right now.
It appears that is the case. Going to be a little vacuum in March on available prompt wood. Yeah.
Is there going to be tariffs on Europe also?
I think it depends on what their trade barriers are per the quote I read this morning.
I want to jump to one thing. I printed out Brian's thing, First Trust, the data watch on the January housing starts. And we were talking about them yesterday a little bit. Greg, what was your observation on the January housing starts?
My observation of January housing starts was that it was, not like much of anything. I mean, we've been talking about, we're basically looking at kind of flattish demand numbers. And that all the report does is confirm that's the case. I did find one of the interesting things was when I looked at completions last year, completions were up divided by 1.48. So completions last year were up actually 12% from the prior year. We completed 1,626,000 houses. So what that's done is drop the under construction number down to the lowest it's been in probably, I'm going to say, pre-COVID. Now I don't have the exact numbers because I was only looking back at a year, but I'm saying it's the lowest in a year under construction. And I looked at that and I said, hey, there's a positive there because we've kind of cleared that backlog of stuff under construction. And with the right environment, that there's some runway to maybe increase housing in 2025. But with interest rates where they are and et cetera, affordability, blah 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 blah. I still think it's a challenge.
Yeah, agreed.
Let's try to think outside the box a little bit here. What's going to change affordability for the average consumer in the United States? I mean, you have on the production side, so on the house side, they can drop the price of the house, right? You can drop the interest rates. You can come up with new ways to finance that are more affordable on a month-to-month basis for people. Things like that, right? But what about this? What about the Doge dividend?
Yeah,
people all of a sudden get an influx of cash and it puts them over the top to qualify for a starter home. I mean, that's going to that's going to have a real world impact.
Could you imagine if they gave that back if people were first-time home buyers? You get a bigger Doge dividend?
I mean, what if you get an extra 10 grand? And,
Yeah.
and it's your money. You're not getting taxed on it. And so you can apply that to, I don't need to rent here anymore. Let's go buy a place, honey.
That's
I mean,
that's
that would
good
make a
point.
difference.
It's a great point.
Yeah,
That's a great point.
I mean, and also something that would be really helpful, but the challenge is that, we talked about this, building regulations. There's the impact at the federal level is very, very limited because it's so heavily driven by local. But there certainly is, a lot of, land area that in certain parts of the country that could be freed up for development. But I'm not sure if it'd be great, if they could figure out how to do something with incentivizing local building to cut regulations. That'd be great.
Yeah, I think you have to do more than incent government officials to cut regulations. You have to be a little more aggressive on that. And I think we're seeing that right now. No, interesting. Gregg, you were saying something in the housing report yesterday about the first 6 months of the year or first 3 months of the year versus these 3 months. It was trending differently.
Was I?
Did I not hear you correctly? You were trying to compare it to the same time last year, or how did that?
Yeah, I think I looked at, not the seasonally adjusted numbers, but the actual numbers and, actual starts in January, they were, like a couple thousand less than last year. What I looked at is the ramp up and kind of the seasonal, in the actual number of starts, and you get probably a 12 to 15% jump, in January to February, and then it really ramps up. And on an actual number of starts, it's at March, April, May are really those are the big numbers on start numbers, and then you kind of have a little dip off, a little dip back in the summertime as with southern climates that are not as conducive, and then you get a little bounce back in the fall. So I just was looking at it, Ash, is that that realization is that days of inventory that people have today shrinks really quick, and then of course weather this week has added days of inventory to a lot of guys.
Yeah. I think that's right. So what does everybody want to buy and sell right now? What's everybody's
blue light special?
what do you like, and what do you have that not that you don't like, but you want to sell?
We're not doing dump anymore. We're doing blue light special. That's it.
Well, we could do that. I just felt it better to just change it up a little bit, right? I think we were talking about the blue light special. And what was the blue light special? Wasn't that Kmart? The blue light special? When we were kids, they used to push that cart around with the little toggle switch on the bottom and that long ass thing, and they'd flip it on, and you'd go buy something in the
So I think from the momentum standpoint, 8-9 foot studs and 2x4 16s are the momentum items right now. I think if I look at a value item, it's probably 2x4 14s. Think back to September, August, September last year, where 2x4 14s were trading $20 and $30 over 2x4 16s. So I would look, if I was out there, I'd and particularly for if you're looking at plate, that that 2x4 14s would be the undervalued item. The things that Sitka, we're continuing to be focused on premium Euro lumber out of Texas ports, 2x6 104s and 116s. We've got some, beautiful lumber. I'd put one of my grandkids' little ones' butts on it. It's so smooth. It's really nice looking stuff.
And it is premium.
It is premium. There you go. Yeah, that's what I got. That's what I got.
I think that's a good place to kind of jump off from, because studs are real, just across the spectrum, from conversations I've had over the past week and kind of what y'all are talking about, even in different species. 9-foot studs have done some pretty interesting things over the past couple of weeks, especially 4-inch and spruce. And that's kind of percolated and trickled into pine as well. So it'll be an interesting ride over the next 60 days for sure.
Charles, have you seen a big order placement for that March, April ship time on 4 and 6-inch 9 pine studs? I mean, what are you out? Are you out like 4 to 6 weeks right now on cutting?
Yeah, very easy. Very easily.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And what's the spread now between spruce and pine delivered, Carolinas? I mean, I think we're like, we're saying we're maybe 565 on 2x4, and are we 695? Maybe we're close to 700 on 2x6.
Yeah.
Well, 6 inches still the 6 inches still the king of the mountain. The spread there is probably $200, if not a little bit more.
You're
sub
500 on delivered on 2x6.
500 to 510 delivered, depending on where it's at and timing. And
that's $1. That's almost $2 a stick.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. That's $5,000 a truck.
That's
$20,000. Like that's $20,000 a car.
Is that is that a lot? Is that a lot?
I mean, I don't know.
What about
I don't have your checkbook,
4 inches?
Greg.
4 inches a little closer to the spruce price.
Yeah, 4 inch is probably $5.25, $5.30. Quick ship. But that's the thing, though, right? You've got what you were talking about in transportation and late trucks and managing all of the potential bottlenecks that have happened with weather and rail and trucks and truck drivers and apparently guys stealing lumber. With us and in the South, we can manage that supply chain for a 36-hour turnaround time and do it pretty well. I mean, we got a big order Monday that was supposed to deliver into Central Florida by Thursday before lunch, and they shipped yesterday. So us being able to put our pulse on that and kind of our stamp and manage the whole deal from A to B makes it a lot more of a fluid scenario versus kind of some of the stuff y'all deal with in the gray area associated with it.
What's low grade doing in all the species right now?
Low grade and pine is astronomically expensive.
Okay.
And I don't know where exactly it's coming from. I mean, on the west side, it doesn't exist. Mills are shipping number 2 for number 3.
Interesting.
There's an interesting thing. I was going to talk about this. Just happened in the last 24 hours, but out of the blue, I'm getting inquiries for Western economy, 2x4 and 2x6. And I don't even trade that stuff. I mean, that's not my core mission in life. I do a lot of utility number 3 and 2 and better, standard better. But I'm not an economy guy. I don't spec on it. I don't stock at my inventory. So I do get a couple times a year where people will reach out and go, hey, can you quote these cars or these trucks? And that's always a signal that the Canadians don't want to ship it across the border for some reason, because that's who they're normally buying it from, the Frasers, the Canfors, the Tocos, and now they're reaching out to Bad Bean and Decker Lake. So something's changed, right? And then on 2x4, Ashley, we're talking this morning, I was telling you that my business on utility number 3 was kind of wasn't great, had a hell of a day, So all of a sudden today I'm getting a lot more orders and they're at my numbers. At the same time, I'm able to buy what I want for now. I'm not sure what it's going to look like in 30 days, just like anybody else.
Matt, that was a fascinating count, because last night I had an inquiry. I don't do any of the low grade. Paul does that all up in our office up in Montreal, and Paul does a great job on it. But I got inquiry for all kinds of 2x4, 8-foot number 3. Yeah. I'm like, shit, okay. And then you and I were talking today, and if I can say, I'm like, Matt goes, well, because think about it, you bring all those cars in, you probably bring, I would say, a lot in, and you've got 8-footers left over because retailers and people don't like 8-footers, right? But you're in that situation now where pallet people and all that can't find it in the East. They're dried up to nothing. Nobody wants to ship them across, and everybody's looking for them, right? So guess the question is, how far north can you go with them, right?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just going to find out here, but something's changed, and so I pay attention to that. When the lowest of the low grade starts coming up, it has an effect on the next highest grade too, right? So that would be your number 3 or utility is going to be impacted by that. The things that I want to, like if I had a blue light special, I want to sell a 2x4 8-foot number 3, and if I have to sell it at the economy price, then so be it. I have too many of them, and they're not as liquid as they used to be. The people that I sell to are not as good at selling the 8s and 10s as they were 5-10 years ago. The market's changed, and so I have to change. Right?
10-footers, all straight trucks at 10-footers and 8-footers.
I always have straight trucks at everything. So I mean, if you need straight trucks at 8s, I've got them. If you need straight trucks at 10s, I mean, I've got them. I got straight trucks at 20s too. I have enough of this stuff laying around that I can cover straight trucks of any length.
I mean,
what about the guy that said
maybe our man at
one
is going to reach out to you, Matt, and
I'm always struggling the most with 8s. Yeah, that's my number one SKU that I have trouble moving the volume.
Before everybody calls and says, "Hey, Matt, can you tell me what mill it is and send me pictures under the paper of everything and write a documentary on it?"
Well, first of all, it's low-grade lumber.
Yeah, I need a dissertation.
Yeah,
I love when I get the inquiry. Can I need premium economy?
I mean, I buy from like
I get that inquiry.
20 different mills. So yeah, I can give you a list of all the mills I buy from if that's what you're asking. But
no, but that's great. You got volume.
Western.
You got volume of 8 and 10-foot utility number 3 trucks sitting down in the Dallas area that you can ship.
Mainly 8s, not 10s. I mean, I have less than half as many 10s as 8s.
And the freight price out of there, you can get pretty far north, more than people think you can out of there. And sometimes
you get Iowa, Nebraska, Illinois, Missouri, Kansas, Arkansas. I've even shipped over to Alabama and Georgia before out of Texas. So interesting. Hey, I bought some lumber from a Euro importer. Our friends at Binderholtz, I bought some lumber from them yesterday, and they're going to truck it over from Panama City, Florida, to my yard in Austin, Texas. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's a good.
I mean, I didn't care. It's the delivered price. It was an item that I wanted to buy, and they had something I wanted, and I'm like, okay. And they told me that shipping it from Panama City. I was like, interesting. How much freight do you think that is, Greg and Ashley?
$85, $95.
No, it's a lot less than you think. It's not as far miles as you think when you look at on the map. I mean, you could probably move it over there for $50 $1,000.
Okay.
By the way, shout out to our friends at Binder. Hi, Thomas.
Shout out Austin, though. I think Austin's a little bit more expensive than that.
Yeah, maybe you may be right. You may be more like 60. But I was interested. Like we sold a bunch of stuff out of like Texas ports up into Tennessee, and I was like really like pleasantly surprised when I saw like what the freight came in at, and I went, wow, that's a, you just look. Some of the lanes are always surprising to me. There's stuff you look at it. Ashley and I do this all the time because we do freight by the seat of our pants. It's like, hey, what do you think it is up there? I don't know. Let's try. And sometimes we get it really right, spot on, and then it goes both ways, plus and minus. But I was interested at how good it was to get up into the central part of the country out of the Houston ports.
I usually take the order and try to back into the freight, and if that doesn't work, I beg for forgiveness.
Do you think, Greg and Ashley?
What did you just say?
He says he takes the order and asks for forgiveness.
Yeah. Well, no, but hey, for all you young traders out there, this is Matt. Young traders out here, always better beg for forgiveness than ask for permission.
Yes,
you guys
the orders and go. Hey.
I hope none of you had children. Okay,
that is a great philosophy.
What were you?
I'll make sure we use that.
What were you saying, Matt?
Uses that all the time on you. Are you kidding me, Charles? Casey's like, oh yeah, man. No, I messed the freight up. I go, how can?
Oh no. We calculate things here.
Charles is a little more analytical. He's not seat of the pants. Yeah,
I'm seat of the pants on a lot of things, but
not on that.
Not on freight. Yeah, right on.
I always joke I don't make money on freight, but I sure lose a lot of money on freight. You want to hear my funny story that I found out today? I had an $800 debit applied to one of the cars that I shipped from a Western BN mill that shipped to. It went to Spokane and switched over to the UP and then went to the destination in the Midwest on the UP. It's a combination rate, they call that.
Yeah.
For furtherance rate. And so I'm asking the rail department, hey, why am I getting this $800 charge? We factored the freight rate in, right? I mean, I don't guess at freight. I look up the freight rates. Oh, well, the UP charges you for a non-system car. So the UP penalizes me for shipping a BN car to a junction point where they pick it up. Now, if it would have been a TTZX car, I wouldn't have had to pay that $800. But since it was like an HLSC car or something else, a different acronym, it wasn't a quote unquote UP system car, I had to pay an $800 stupid tax. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, man. This is ridiculous.
And you know why
Shoot
they
me
can
now.
you know why they can bill you and charge you that? Because they can.
Yeah, they got you by the shorties.
Just as a like a public service, I mean, I know some of our mills alerted us a week or two ago that, hey, the CN's saying they may have problems. They are having problems. There's winter this year, and they're having a problem with winter. We are starting to see, guys mill orders 40 cars, are only getting 17. I got a bit of a backup on cars going into a couple of the yards. So, we'll see if it gets more acute. I mean, it hasn't been a problem for us yet because we had a pretty solid on the ground position, but it may get more serious over the next week or two. We'll have
that
to.
is going to have an impact, combined with tariffs. You could have a real.
Mona, didn't we move the date for tariffs back to April? Didn't I read that somewhere?
I mean,
I've
heard March 10th to April 3rd.
Next week, I'm going to declare victory on KIP, right? Because that might be at my 60 days, right?
No, I mean, I will enjoy my seafood pot.
I
So
thought
Fly
you
the flag,
gave them a
Greg.
free
Fly the
option,
flag.
a free on time. Like
Yeah, I thought it was like for the whole year.
Yeah, no,
forever.
but we drilled down and we said, no, you got to have a date on it. Yeah.
I have a question for the two of you, Greg and Ash. Do you see the amount of imported lumber increasing going in the second quarter?
We saw the deal on the Swedish mills shutting down. And so at least on one of them, they may be getting less lumber in the second quarter because of that. I mean, we've got several of our suppliers that are currently shipping us lower volumes because of log availability, blah, 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 blah. So I think my answer, Matt, is I think it's going to be, and we saw this when we were in Vancouver, right, Charles? They talked up the fact that, log costs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I had a conversation with one of the mills about, what the return that they were getting in the UK and in the domestic markets was so much higher than the US price. So I'm actually saying that I think Q2 will be modestly lower than we have been receiving. That's my newest kind of sense, with absolutely no data to back it up. I listen to the news sometimes, and the liberal media wants to say Donald Trump said such and such, but he gave no evidence. I just want to let you know I have no evidence of this, but that's what I'm saying.
So now, if there is a tariff, one last thing, and I'm just going to shut. Let me just ask this, and then I'll just stop talking. If there's a tariff and we have a 25% tax applied here in a month, the Canadian dollar going to go down and absorb some of that 25%, you think? What are your thoughts on that?
No, there's no way they can afford to do that. The inflation in that country is way too high. The cost, that's not possible, in my opinion. I have no evidence to back that up, but in my humble opinion, I don't think that happens. I really don't. There's no way that. At that point, the country. I don't believe that's going to happen.
There was a guy. It was on my X feed when I was talking about the Vita and Sodra sawmill production shutdowns.
Where'd you get that information from, Ash?
From you, Charles.
Okay,
From you, and I gave you credit that I got a sale for that, and I did not give you credit on X. And
I just wanted credit here because I mean I'm the king of data.
And
funny how those things work.
At H79, Share Sunder said their argument: we can't buy stuff for $100 and sell it for $80. And I thought that was a great argument of why these guys might be shutting some stuff down right now, right?
So you're saying it's just math?
It's just math, yeah.
But back to you on the Canadian dollar. I mean, the exchange rate already is. I mean, it's like it's 142, 143. I mean, it's down in spit. We're going up to Montreal, and it's like everything's half price.
50% discount, blue light special, Greg.
It's like college.
Right. I mean, I'm saying it's like,
it's like college again. It's like
you sell something delivered in the U.S. at $500. That's like $700.
It's like college again. It's 50-cent beer night up there during the whole convention. And this is like double X beer with like 3 times the alcohol.
Yeah. I already got that speech from Kip.
Yeah.
Luckily, they don't have any guns in Canada, so I won't have any guns with me. But yeah. But no, I it's the whole European thing, and I had some real interesting conversations about it because to a certain extent they were in a very similar scenario with the beetle kill and some of the lower cost logs that they were able to rescue value out of, for lack of a better way, harvest value. Now they're in a situation to where they're having to buy real open market logs like we do in the South, and it's a totally different market. I think the last conversation I had, they were paying like $180 a metric ton, which equates somewhere $300 to $330 a thousand board foot just for the log. So I mean that makes it tough, and then you got to send it all the way across the world to make any money. But to Greg's point, as far as the volume that we're going to get, I think that's going to be indicative of what you can sell 2x4-16s for. If you can get 2x4-16s at $750, I think you're going to see all the European wood that you can swallow.
Mm. Yeah, I think when you get north of 700 FOB US ports, but there's a 8 to 12 week lag in the market price and then the lumber showing up. Right?
Oh, agree with that 110%. But I think it's going to throw another variable in the mix.
If Greg's right about clearing the runway for a little bit extra demand going in 2025, and you've got seasonality hitting here over the next 90 to 120 days, you've got weather, issues today, which, hey, it snowed. My kids didn't have school on Thursday and Friday last week. So yeah, we're in winter, but that all clears up come June, July, August. And then you've got the repair and remodel. They're ramping up hard right now, and they're talking big talk. So I think the industrial markets obviously are improving a little bit too, because we wouldn't be getting these economy inquiries if there wasn't some action there in that part of the world. And I have, like I said, had a pretty busy day here and on my number 3 stuff. So dude, it could get really interesting and spicy here. We could have a much different summer this year than we did last year when we hit our yearly low in the middle of July.
I mean, I'm still trying to understand my thought process. 2 things is, if there are no tariffs and they get pushed farther down the road, but we do have visibility on a CVD and anti-dumping going to 30 or 40% at some point, July, August, whenever it is, there's certainly going to be an incentive to, sell, ship, push, and ship product in front of that increase in the CVD. But I did want to come back, as Charles is on the blue light, is what items in Southern Pine would you identify right now as, hey, these are tremendously undervalued and would be good potential buys? And conversely, what do you see that's really overvalued and would maybe not be as excited about?
I think 8-inch is undervalued. So is 10-inch. Obviously, 12-inch in specific lengths. I mean, you look at 2x10 number 1 on the east side. I mean, some of the links are sub 350. I mean, if you
Yeah.
use
Almost
I
all of
mean-
them are sub 350.
I mean, 2x10, 14 foot, number one on the west side is $330. 18s are $290. So the king out west and 2x10, number one is 20 foot. But I've heard there's a ton of 20 foot that showed up for that obvious reason. So now that price is no longer valid, or it's getting butchered, for lack of a better way to describe it.
Can you just tell me why 2x12 number one showed a $1,060 print?
Because it's 20 foot,
Okay.
and that's a hell of a stick, and not a lot of people pull it.
Okay.
But if you look at 14 number two, $310. That's
That's the
insane.
big item for multifamily jobs when they need 2x12. It's 14s.
Yep. And
What
we're
are
not
12s?
355. And I mean, if you look at some of the other zones, I mean, 14s in the West are 405. I mean, the arbitrage opportunity there is relatively large if you're positioned correctly. As far as overvalued, I don't know if I think we're at healthy levels if we can sustain it, right? I think the numbers that we're getting, mills are actually able to make money, and they're able to make decisions, right? I mean, nobody likes to fight with their back against the wall. But I also think there's got to be follow through. I mean, you hear all this noise about tariffs, and I hate to say it, you look at the board, you look at some of these various variables that are impacting pricing as a whole, snow, wet weather, species swapping in the Southeast. It's going to create a scenario to where, once again, broken record, higher lows and higher highs, and we're not going to dip back down, because a lot of footage in the South did get taken off. And as Kip has explained very illustriously in the last time he was on, a matter of how much pine actually went on or came off, or the net change was very minimal, even with the greenfield operations that did start. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how the cookie crumbles. I mean, if treaters step in the next 30 days, and as to Matt's point, if R&R steps up, I mean, big bucks could be wide open for quite a bit.
Just one quick thing before we wrap it up. And I think this was Casey's idea talking to him the other day, because this is not my idea. But what happened? This is a Euro deal. What happens if the Ukrainian-Russian war finishes? Does that increase fiber coming over here? Does that do anything if all of a sudden it's over and everything's wide open as far as shipping Russian logs, etc.? Will that open?
Yeah, they're
up?
embargoed, aren't they?
I believe
Yep.
so. I don't know enough about it,
Yes,
but
they are.
I think
Yes, they are.
I'm sure they are.
And
That was one of the
impact
sanctions.
market starting in Q3 probably would be
Okay.
the soonest that you reestablish supply chains, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, did you see where I saw something today in the news where Putin was quoted, there's a Russia-US alliance now after they met. And this whole Ukraine thing has been a farce, and Zelensky could have ended it a hell of a lot sooner than it's as long as it's going on.
Hold on,
So
let me make sure there's no drones outside of my window right now.
Well,
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, I'm just happy we're not doing
I can
this
hear the
live.
black helicopter circling Charles's place right now.
Your point is, I think a lot of the stuff that gets said gets misrepresented by the media
110%.
to advance their political leaning. The reality is, it makes no sense for us to keep doing what we're doing, which is just sending a whole bunch of money over there for the status quo.
Hell, he doesn't know where half of it went.
We need to find an end game, and that doesn't necessarily mean that we're rewarding Putin for what he did. No, we're just ending this because that's what makes sense. And try and end it in a way that prevents something further to happening is smart. But it's just like when Trump made a statement that's saying, hey, we should, all the Palestinians should leave Gaza, and we should turn it into a beautiful place. I mean, these people have been living in an open air concentration camp with the guards being organized crime terrorists for the last 50 years. It hasn't worked. Let's think outside the box and do something different. Ash, your call on whether you want to cut this whole rant.
Yeah.
I saw a guy on Twitter today, a European, and he said that there's $300 billion stuck in Europe that we've taken from Putin. And it's just sitting there, and France and Belgium don't want to give it back to the US or Russia. or Ukraine. And that's what the beef is right now. And it's a money thing. And I'm like thinking to myself, interesting. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's interesting. And so I'm going to dig into that a little bit, because how many billions of dollars have we sent over there to fight a losing battle?
Almost probably $120 billion, I think.
I think it's like $250 billion.
We'll decide to keep this in. Here's my rant to the whole thing.
Are you going to cut this out?
I like that. No,
So,
we're keeping it. Apparently,
every time I travel around the United States, the world, places I've never been, see these huge freaking houses and wonder how people make money, and see people travel in private and have 3 homes and all this kind of stuff. I say, self, do you think after seeing Doge find all this that maybe, just maybe, there were a bunch of people around the Washington, D.C. area that are husbands and wives and kids, and they're clipping a coupon that went through 7 hops from my taxes through all kinds of NGOs and every acronym you can think of and back into their pocket?
What does an NGO stand for?
Non-governmental organization.
And I'm like, that's what I see. And that's what bums me about this whole thing is there's a lot of people, I think, that got, and I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, both sides should be upset about this. If people are sitting there at their house clipping a coupon off the government to do something that really doesn't need to be done, and at scale that is even hard to fathom, I got a problem with that. And I hope
it's criminal, dude.
I hope everything's found out about it. I hope they find out how this money's going, and I hope Doge gives me a $30,000 refund for the next 10 years.
Yeah, you know what the best part about this?
Greg,
I got an age joke. You ready? The best part about this is that y'all have paid more taxes in your lifetime than I have. So I hope that whatever Doge ends up giving to the U.S. American, you get more than I do, because you deserve it.
The interesting thing is like, hey, like if I pay a lot of taxes, I go like, hey, listen, I'd rather do that than not be able to pay it at all. But what I do take, what I really get upset is when, people say I don't pay enough.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah.
But Matt, you're right. It's $300 billion, it says, in frozen in assets that Europe's holding. $300 billion.
It's almost like I actually read some stuff from time to time.
That's crazy. That's all.
You're not one of the.
That's so much money.
3 of us are smart.
So much money.
You are one of them.
I don't know. Charles is talking about optimizers and all this, fancy word stuff. I can't keep up with him. He's like the amazing Cuban.
I'm just going to keep my mouth shut, because if you got to
ask,
if you got to be the one to ask if you're not the smartest one in the room, you probably are.
Well, once again, I'm humble enough to know I don't know everything, and I appreciate,
man, you know what? This was really fun. This was really fun today, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Hopefully we don't cut out all the really good stuff. Cheers.
All right, boys. Have a good day.
See you, boys.
All right.
See you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Lumber Word. The Lumber Word podcast is dedicated to engaging conversations about the lumber industry, including trading ideas, market trends, and evaluations of overvalued and undervalued assets. We wish to emphasize that the discussions and opinions expressed in this podcast are purely for informational and entertainment purposes. They should not be considered as financial or investment advice. We encourage our listeners to make their own financial decisions, taking into account their unique circumstances and financial goals, and to seek professional financial advice if necessary.